So, this little poem came to me this morning, and I was very moved just to share it here. And it's called Awakening. 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 The cold wind in the late time of the year steers us clear from the water's edge. The cold wind in the late time of the year steers us clear from the water's edge. Beneath the dark stones at the bottom of the well, the mud settles into itself, and a swell rises from the east. And in the west, another beast opens its eyes and peers upward toward the grey light. Stagnant and stubborn, choked and strangled by sediment, layers and layers of long forgotten memories, impressions, false confessions, and long standing transgressions stir in the silt like defrosting mammoths. Starving, ravenous, murderous, mad. Hmm. You know, as I say, that little poem just came to me there this morning, and do you know what's interesting, isn't it? That oftentimes when we write poetry, I know when I write poetry anyway, when it comes to me, it's so easy to think that it's in large part about you, And in my experience, this has not been the case, Of course, our own life experiences, and the different trials and tribulations and struggles and joys and concerns and all of that make up any individual life will always have their part to play in every little thing that gets written if one's inclined to write a bit of poetry or be creative in any shape or form, and certainly in terms of the creative arts anyway. But yeah, your own personal story, if you will, your own personal life, all of those bits and pieces, they will certainly play their part, they will certainly be used, But for me, and certainly these poems that I've been playing with and attempting to work with in the last year or two, um, the, there's a very universal flavor to them, and I find that's the only way, really, not the only way, but it's the best way for me to write poetry. It's very easy to get too bogged down in our own stories. It is for me anyway, and I find that when I can access something that's universal and even transpersonal, in that it goes beyond the limits of my own personal story and comes from and feels into the broader human experience of which we're all a part. This tends to be very much the way somehow that I'm inclined here to write poetry, and when I'm coming from that place, it's easier to get out of my own way, if that makes sense. But that this little poem, as I said, I wanted to share it, and it came to me this morning, and and this is exactly what I'm getting at here. That this little in the form of this little poem, it speaks to what I'm saying. I believe, I feel, um, and even the name of it, awakening. More often than not, these little poems, like, they don't get their title until after they've arrived in to me consciousness, if you like, and then I've put them into form on the paper. Like, they don't get their title until after that. This is not an uncommon thing, but it's certainly the way also it works here. But you know, this little poem for me, seems to speak very clearly. I won't say clearly because poetry isn't clear as much as it's, poetry for me isn't attempting to communicate clear truths. You know, truth is a truth is a curious creature. We'll talk about that another time, maybe. But it's not attempting to communicate. Um, you know, it's unlike prose in that sense, or it's unlike it's not trying attempting to give any definitive meaning, And for me, poetry isn't even attempting to create meaning. It's more about creating connections, and that's the gorgeous thing about poetry. And that's, I think, where I'm coming from as well when I speak. Yes, poetry will move through the personal, but it comes from the universal, you know. And look at, there's nothing wrong with writing poetry completely, and utterly just to do with the personal. A lot of personal healing, and all of the rest of it can come out of that way of doing it. But I find that this is the best way, for me to approach it, to meet the poetry, is to, yes, have one foot in the personal, but another larger foot even in the impersonal, in the transpersonal, in the universal, you know. And then somehow a river opens up, a channel, if you like, opens up, that goes beyond the person, goes beyond the personal story, goes beyond the individual, even though it uses the individual as a conduit, if you like, you know. And mm, and I think this is the case for all art forms, But again, and we'll chat about that another time, perhaps. Yeah. So yeah, this little poem, as I said, came to me this morning, and it it's interesting that its title, Awakening. Ordinarily, we think of awakening in terms of the light and something religious or spiritual. And these are words that are terribly loaded words, and they mean a million different things to a million different people. But generally, we associate the term awakening with you know with the light, and you know with the more let's say, inspirational or heavenly aspects of our nature, or we associate the term awakening with you know uh, 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 in terms of nowadays, for a long time now, this is the awakening is such a widespread term now. People wakening up to this or to that, and people talk about the world wakening up and needing to wake up, and I'm not saying that is not perhaps happening, or indeed necessary. But what's interesting to me is that the way this poem came in and wanted to be named, it speaks an awful lot about what this channel is attempting to get at, as well as to this notion of landing, And I suppose, like, our ordinary, or let's say more familiar or common way of understanding, interpreting the term awakening is how could I put it, is an outward, spacious expansion or expansive experience of you know of you know of I don't want to pause for too long now, but I don't want to just jump in here and say something that is just to fill a gap. And this is and this really takes us back as well, you know, to I think what we're getting at here and what this little poem is getting at, you know. So the outward expansive sort of you know, blissful almost, you know, samadhi like experiences are what we would commonly, ordinarily associate with the term awakening, you know, and the ways in which that benefit our lives and the lives of others, and that's all very relevant and important and valid. However, for me, the you know the there's and you know there's a real that's only part of it, you know. The other part of it is, to my mind, what this little poem is speaking of, you know, and it's also calling itself awakening, you know. You know, it's not really about expansion. It's more about perhaps retract, if not retraction, contraction, or a willingness to come back down into whatever's here in the body, you know, and in the human experience, you know. The cold wind in the late time of the year steers us clear from the water's edge. Beneath the dark stones at the bottom of the well, the mud settles into itself, and a swell rises from the east, and in the west another beast opens its eyes and peers upward toward the grey light, you know. For me, it's asking us to land more fully in the direct experiences of what's happening here in our bodies, you know. And much more than that, it seems to be, you know, it seems to be saying, talking about, you know, the underbelly, you know, of shadow and residual collective pain, really, that is characteristic of the times we live in, you know, the unmet, unacknowledged pain, both in the individual, but this poem for me is speaking on a much more universal level, you know. And, you know, and I could go on, but I don't want about what it's bringing up for me and how I feel it's speaking to me. And there's much more I could say on it, and I will at another time, but I have a lunch date, so I'm not going to in half an hour, so I'm not going to go on too much. But so this is what I'm getting at, you know. This, yeah, and it goes on then from there, you know, and for me, after giving us that statement that's saying there's something here, you know, there's something here, you know, and we're steering clear of it, like, you know, because, you know, it's too cold, and when it's cold, we like to stay clear of things, and we're staying clear in it. But beneath, down here in the well is such a gorgeous and again universal, you know, an image that more often than not speaks to those unacknowledged, you know, and unexpressed and unfelt aspects to our experience, as I say, individually and collectively, that, you know, that, is, you know, the well is, as I say, a universal image of that, you know, and it's been used in poetry and all forms of art right through the ages, really, for that purpose, you know. You know, you'll find the image of the well in a lot of depth psychology that would have came out of the work of Carl Jung, and before that, it pops up right, left, and centre in mythology, particularly Western mythology, but you know, not just Western. You know, so yeah, the poem is saying, you know, you know, there's this big underbelly of collective shadow, and it seems to be suggesting that this is what's at the core of much of the conflict and the confusion, uncertainty, you know, and fear and free floating anxiety, really, that is, I think so very obvious to most of us, if not all of us, at this time, you know. Yeah, and so it gives us that first verse gives us that image and asks us, actually, I think the poem is inviting us to say, you know, this is here, and it's interesting to me as well the way it juxtaposes the east and the west. Beneath the dark stones at the bottom of the well, the mud settles into itself and a swell rises from the east. And in the west, another beast. You know, it's you know it's looking as these it's looking at these two forces. You know, one from the east, one from the west. One from the right side, one from the left side. Seemingly on oppositional forces. Seemingly, you know. And the mud settles into itself, and the swell rises from the east, and in the west another beast opens its eyes and peers upward toward the grey light, It's saying that this is here, and something in the way in which we're operating, while it's on the surface, it appears, as I've said, that it's very confusing, very frightening, very full of uncertainty, conflict, unease, um, globally, really. You know, there's something in the way that it's happening that is disturbing the sediment down here. It's been it's shaking the sediment at the bottom of the well, and it also seems to be saying that needs to happen. You know, it goes on then in the second stanza or verse. And it says, stagnant and stubborn, choked and strangled by sediment, layers and layers of long forgotten memories, impressions, false confessions, and long standing transgressions stir in the silt like defrosting mammoths. Starving, ravenous, murderous, mad. And then it stops. And then it stops. It doesn't continue on to give us any, you know. And I think that that's very indicative of the times that we live in. There are no simple answers, and the same sort of solutions and ways of thinking, that would have served us yesterday, do not seem to be serving us very well today. No matter how we rehash them. So what does that mean? I'm not sure it means anything. You see, it just means that this poem came this morning, and the movement, the impulse was to share it and to feel into it for myself. This is not me explaining to you what this poem means. Poems of these nature, they come to me, and they're as much and more so for me to feel into as they are anybody else. So that's in large part actually why I created this channel. And so, yeah, and maybe some of you or anybody that's listening got something from that, and can, and maybe we have a small bit more bandwidth because of it. Who knows? You know, who knows? 11:45. It's a good start to the week for me. Very good. Thanks for listening.